All right, so hello and welcome back. So today we're gonna take a look at one I am fucking fangirling out right now. Arrow vs. Armor 2 from Todd's Workshop. The link is in the description. Please go give them a like. In fact, watch that video in the background so they get watch time and a like. They do amazing work, Todd, and you're about to see my reaction as a military historian with another military historian standing over there. This video is gonna be great. It's probably gonna have to be broken up into two parts. Also, I usually do videos Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, but this video is important enough that I will be releasing it as soon as I can possibly do so. So without further ado, let's get to it. Oh boy, I'm excited.
Did you hear that? Hi, it's Todd from Todd's Workshop here, and I'm back with Arrows vs. Armour 2, and we are going to be shooting this night here. It might look like ordinary armour, it really isn't. It's been so carefully made by Augusto, our armourer. It's going to get carefully shot by Joe, our archer, with the arrows that Will, our Fletcher, has made, and all of this is going to get interpreted by myself and our arms and armour historian, Toby Capwell.
So yes, this is the second part of this. If you haven't seen the first part, I recommend you go watch it. This is about as accurate or historically accurate as we're going to be able to ever test armor possible. Right? We're never going to be able to go back in time and pull armor off of somebody. But they'll probably go into this. They're pulling the armor from the museums, measuring it as best they can, and recreating it as best they can. And they're using an English archer. That man, I believe he can shoot a 160-pound bow all day, is what he said, but 200-pound bow he can also shoot, but he's really tired after that. So you don't want to do that. So 160 pounds, but again, I'll let him speak on that. And this armor is actually pretty fucking good. I don't know the whole composition layers, which we'll probably get into, but usually plate, mail, gambeson underneath, and then padding, right? That's a bassinet. So it's a hound skull bassinet, or a pig face bassinet, actually. Because the Battle of Agincourt in 1415 is the period we are going to test the armor. So the English longbow versus armor. And they'll probably get into all this. I just wanted to preface it a little bit.
3 years in the planning, and I cannot tell you how excited I am for this day. We're all so excited to see it getting shot.
And he said 3 years. So the last video came out in 2019, and we all know what happened in 2020 and 2021. So that's why there's been a very long time for this video to come out.
Before we do that, we've got to find out a little bit more about the armor and the equipment we're going to be using, because it's really important so we all know what it is that we're going to see. This is Arrows vs. Armour 2. So of course there's been a 1, and in 1 we shot a breastplate. A really singular test. Do arrows go through? Do they not go through? So many questions were left hanging before, because a knight is much more than just a breastplate.
Yeah, and to investigate something as complicated as the battlefield environment in 1415, you got to go from simple to complex. We started with one issue. Can an arrow penetrate the strongest frontal area of the armor? But that's not the whole story. There's a lot more going on. Now we can get a little more complex. On the one hand, we're saying knights had great armor and great protection. And on the other side, we're saying, well, the longbow is a fantastic weapon. How can you be a fantastic weapon and have fantastic protection? There's got to be something going on in the middle, and it's all about complexity.
Yeah. One thing.
And they'll probably, again, the very first armor test was about as scientific as you can fucking do about this. And it's very eye-opening as a historian. Obviously, from that test, we can deduce that if you get shot with a decent breastplate on from an English arrow at 20 yards, 20 meters, ain't going through. If you hit, chainmail, it'll punch through. Chainmail, gambeson, it'll actually damage them. This is Dr. Tobias Capwell. If you don't know him, he's the Wallace Collection Armor and Armories dude. So he knows what the fuck he's talking about. Also, if you want to ever watch some of his lectures, you can. You just type in Dr. Tobias Capwell, and you will pull up your interviews. You can watch. They're like college lectures is the best way I can describe them. So if you're ever interested in that, I go watch them. They're not viewed that much for some reason, but he is very informed of the subject. So
thing that we really do know is that Knights died at Agincourt, and this will allow us some insights into how that may have happened.
And that's why what we're doing, I think, is important, because this is allowing us to get into issues of the real physical world, the real human environment. What was it like? What did it feel like? What did it sound like? You cannot get close to this in the archives, my friends.
and I completely agree with him. There's only so much us historians can pull from an archive. We don't know what it felt like. We don't know how it was to move it. We don't know like if things were penetrating, like what people would do, for example, if they would like today, modern soldiers get rid of some equipment because they don't need it, or they tie stuff, or they bungee strap something, or they burn something off, or they cut something short. Or for example, like some Marines, I recently found a video. They fucking cut a whole bunch of shit off their plate carriers, and then put it back on themselves so it's lighter and more comfortable for them. Again, we don't know that from the medieval time, but we can know it now from just modern gear. So soldiers always played with their equipment. So this is a very good. I would argue that this is about as historical recreation as you can possibly get, and actually will further the field rather than it just being some random test ever done. This is about as close to a test you will ever get, really, on this armor.
You got to get out in the field, and that's what we're trying to do.
For me, the justification, if you like, of what we're doing here is really quite simple. The Kickstarter fundraising for the film allows us to buy the very best equipment, and we're going to shoot it with the best archer we can get and the best arrows we can get. And what happens is what happens. But whatever it is, it's something I didn't know yesterday, but by the end of today, I will know.
Yes, and the Kickstarter was actually very successful. And there is a lot of money to do this project because, again, it is one of the most important projects I think you could they've done with the it's one of their most successful videos, and for a good reason. It was very well done. So I'm very happy that this video got made.
Okay, let's talk about the armor. I'm here with Augusto, our new armorer, who's made all these fabulous plates for us. Overall, I'm really happy with what this looks like. And it's kind of no surprise because this is the period that you're really passionate about, isn't it?
It is. I've been studying for, I guess, at least a decade, like originals, weights of the originals, trying to find thicknesses, material composition, hardness, studying the art, just try to follow all the sources I could get.
So tell us a bit.
Just think about all of that he just listed. That is everything that has to go into just getting the armor very similar to what it was. And you have to do all of that research, and you got to go to the museums, and then they'll also have replicas, or not even replicas, the actual armor that was still preserved from that time period that they can go off of, which is what they did for the first test.
More about what specifically we have here. Why have we decided to make these the way they are? What are our sources for this?
Of course. The helmet is based on the Wallace Collection A69, which you might be familiar with.
I know it well. That was a good one to choose because we both have had hands-on access to it, and that particular helmet in the Wallace Collection has a chance of being a specifically French example. The part of the Wallace Collection helmet that doesn't survive is the original Aventail. And this was made by a friend of ours, wasn't it?
Yes, this was made by Isaac Krog, based in Sweden.
Yep.
And the Aventail is a replica of Kerberg 15 Aventail.
Right.
So these are thicker, bigger rings of like very heavy-duty wire.
And Kerberg Castle in northern Italy is one of the most important surviving groups of 14th and early 15th century armor. So it's a really important reference point for everything we're building here, right? Including the breastplate.
The breastplate.
Yeah.
And as he mentioned, that place in Italy, there's reference points. We still actually have a lot of, I won't say a lot, but we have a significant more amount of medieval armor than we do, let's say, for example, Roman armor. Most Roman armor we find is dug up from the ground. So we still have surviving examples that we can pull from, which is very good. And as I described, this Aventail here is basically protecting your whole neck from blows, basically, from swords, slashes, blunt force. Because of how rounded the surface of your neck is, like it's sloped, it may not go through that, because again, it will go through a flat surface. The arrow will go through a flat surface of mail in through the gambeson. Will it kill you? No. Again, it depends where it hits, but that's what the Aventail is for. It's just another layer of protection.
Reference point for everything we're building here, right? Including the breastplate.
The breastplate
Yep.
is based on Kerberg 14.
Which is one of the earliest surviving one-piece breastplates.
It is, absolutely. The arms as well, actually, from Kerberg Castle. This is based on
Yep.
Kerberg 10, but with a spin, because I have put a rotating upper cannon, which is a typical French feature of the time.
Yeah.
And it will be very interesting to see what an arrow does when there's two independent layers of thin metal.
It's the layering principle
It
again.
is.
I guess we'll see.
They all have variable thicknesses, which usually means it's thicker in the front and thinner in the sides, as per originals. The arms, for example, are 1 millimeters. The breastplate goes from 3.5 to 1, as does the skull and the visor.
Yeah,
So-
because 1 millimeter thick sounds worryingly thin.
but that is what most of the originals are.
Right.
Yeah, and as you said, these are millimeters how thick this armor is, and it still can weigh around 60 kg fully up if you're wearing it fully. So it's not light, I'll say. So it's around 60, 70 pounds is the best way I can describe it. So 60 kg is probably what it is if you're wearing it if you're wearing the armor and yourself. Maybe. I'm not really familiar with kgs, unfortunately, because I'm American. But armor's around 60 all the way up to 80 pounds usually. You go higher and you can go lower. But again, it's only a few millimeters of protection. But the reason they can get away with that on certain places is, for example, it is round, it is curved. If you hit the breastplate, it's going to deflect off, right? And then pew! And then, as we all know, T-34 sloped armor is more effective. And if you can get slope, I mean, the human body is very sloped, let's put it that way. So
Right, because you
Yes.
have to balance the weight versus the protection. You need thick plates where you're going to get hit the most, but it can't be thick everywhere or the armor's going to be too heavy.
Absolutely.
The whole thing can't end up being more than 25 or 30 kilos in total at the most. So you've got to make some hard choices about where you put the weight.
You do.
So what's the plate armor made out of?
This is all made of mild steel.
Modern mild steel? Is that the best material to be using?
According to our own tests and to Alan Williams in his book The Night in the Blast Furnace, mild steel is a good representative for cross-laminated wrought iron.
Yeah, in the early 15th century, that's a particularly common material for plate armor.
It is. We do have steels, but a lot of the stuff was made of just like iron.
And that's an important point. Last time we had the same style of breastplate, but made in medium carbon steel. So it ended up representing a really high-end quality breastplate, not the average by any means. This one is much more typical of the masses of French knights who were on the field. Most of them were wearing something made out of a material more like this.
I think it is a pretty fair comparison, yes.
So we're using a steel that is of lesser quality than the first one, because the first one was very high quality steel on the breastplate. As he mentioned, it was carbon steel, and this one's more mild steel from our own era. You may ask, well, why don't they use the whole wrought iron thing? Basically, it's very hard to get fucking iron and smelt it yourself and do it all from yourself. So our best comparison would be mild steel. So maybe a few degrees off, but again, we're going to see a more general, again, lower quality was usually the standard of the norm for knights. Again, knights varied very wildly in how much they got paid, what equipment they used. Again, so it's all over the place. And I would agree that if we're going to do this again, maybe use a lower quality breastplate and see what happens.
Plates can't protect everything. And in 1415, we're still in a period when full masses of French knights who were on the field, most of them were wearing something made out of a material more like this.
I think it is a pretty fair comparison, yes.
So the plates provide some really formidable protection in key areas. But looking at the whole figure, you can see that he's got vulnerabilities. The hard plates can't protect everything. And in 1415, we're still in a period when full plate exoskeletons are only just starting to appear. There's a substantial area below his waist. You know, his whole lower torso has no plate protection at all.
That's something people forget. There's a whole medieval armor goes through stages, okay? Before this is considered almost full plate. Before this, we had coat of plates, and then before that, just chainmail hauberks. And again, there's a good 600 year, depends where you want to start. So usually 800 to 1400, 1500. Get 600 years there. and that armor is continuously evolving. So are the weapons too. So again, this is 1415 is not the absolute pinnacle of armor yet. That really happens in the 15 and 1600s. Really, the 1600s is when you get absolute pinnacle. But I mean, guns are round in numerous numbers by then. So they have plates in 1415. They just don't have them everywhere. So you're not going to see a full Gothic suit of armor like the Germans had, or the Milan style in full swing yet.
This isn't us just getting lazy. This is how a lot of armor of this period was actually worn. And he's chosen to leave plates off his lower torso for the sake of being a bit lighter, being a bit more mobile, or just not having access to a plate skirt. Lots of people didn't. This is a characteristic feature of this period. Rapidly to change later, but we have to be strict about where we are in time. But one thing we really see here that it's not just about thickness. You've got some really extreme forms. The shape that the armor has gives it a lot of extra strength and protectiveness. Just looking this figure up and down, your head starts to spin a bit at the possibilities of what arrows might do when they hit this.
It will be really interesting to see what these very nasty arrows are gonna do. It will be painful, but it will be definitely worth it.
As with everything in the Arrows versus Armour film.
So I'll let you know that I have done archery before. I have shot at state competition when I was middle school-ish, so I know how to use a bow. So shooting the target from around this far, it's relatively easy to hit around what you're trying to aim at. You can't go through eye holes, unless you're very good and practice every day, which this man does. So just so you know, I do have a little bit of experience with the archery. Not a lot with the actual wearing of the armor, mostly because I'm poor and I can't afford any of that stuff. So some of my predictions, just before we get to talking about the archer here, is my predictions are going through the chainmail should be relatively easy. I'm wondering about this Aventail. It would be very interesting to see if it punches through or not. I'm 50-50 on it. It could easily punch through and it could just completely not because of how thick it is, and it has gambeson underneath, which is cloth, basically a very thick cloth to stop. I suspect that the breastplate doesn't get penetrated. However, the shoulder pieces, if you get hit on a flat on surface, they may go through. This is going to go through the little elbow, obviously, and then maybe through the arm plates down here. So I'm very interested to see. I think the helmet is going to be completely fucking impervious. I'll be very honest with you. I don't think anything is going through that helmet. So let's check on the archer.
Painful, but it will be definitely worth it.
As with everything in the Arrows versus Armour films, we want to know that we're doing it right as best as we can guess, as best as we can estimate. So, Joe Gibbs, incredible archer. We know that, but you're shooting what, 160-pound bow today? Is anything different from the last time we did trials 3 years ago?
So it's the same bow, so a copy of the ones off the Mary Rose, which is the only data we have to go by. Slightly higher than mid-range, but in there definitely.
If you don't know, the Mary Rose is an English ship that was sunk around. I mean, Elizabeth was on the throne, let's put it that way. So it was in the 1500s, or 1600s almost, I think. So either late 1500s or early 1600s. But basically, it was a ship and it got sunk. However, it got sunk somewhere in the English Channel, if I remember, somewhere near England, and they were able to find it and excavate it. Okay, and there was a whole bunch of arrows on there with a whole bunch of bows that weren't completely destroyed, along with cannons and stuff. So that is our best reference point. Is stuff that was about 150 years later from this point, but it's our only reference point for really anything medieval on longbows that we're going to be using. So again, what would change between 150 years and a longbow? My guess is not a lot. Probably the arrows are the only thing that would really be changing, because I don't think you can make the bow better, let's put it that way. A longbow like this, I mean.
In there definitely, self-view, 160 pounds. As for the target, it's slightly different, isn't it?
Has that changed in your head how you will approach shooting? Because before, you were just shooting at a breastplate.
I definitely have areas that I'm going to be looking at, especially these parts. An arrow in there, he's done.
For me, that's looking really vulnerable. And Will Sherman, extraordinary Fletcher. Is there anything now that you feel has really changed, or have you just confirmed really your thinking from the first time around?
We're using the same arrows, we're using the same iron heads. What has changed is I've gone away and I've clarified that we're doing it right. So we've gone back through the records, we've gone back through the museum artifacts, and we know that they were using iron heads. We're still copying an iron head from the time period. We know that heads from Agincourt were found. One in particular was found that was definitely a bodkin, not a barbed head. So we're doing that end right. And for me, again, we were shooting at a breastplate alone last time. This time we've got a whole bunch of gaps and more mail in there. To see what these heads do to other areas is going to be really interesting.
Well,
And these are bodkin arrows, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I basically only shot one type of arrow, which was standard arrowhead. So yeah, and when they're referring to 160-pound longbow like this, that means it takes 160-pound force to pull back. So you can see that there's like crossbows that have like 1,160 pounds to pull back. Technically, that is true. It takes 160 pounds to pull it back, not that far. But a longbow you can pull back much further, right? So 160 pounds is doable, and 200 pounds is actually doable and fucking tiring. And when you're doing like these 1,500, 1,600-pound crossbows, you can't pull them back unassisted. So you have mechanical things that pull it back, and it only goes so far. There's a math behind why it's 1,600 pounds to pull it back just a certain amount of distance.
This time we've got a whole bunch of gaps and more mail in there. To see what these heads do to other areas is going to be really interesting.
well, Todd, I've been waiting 3 years for this, so I'm pretty excited.
Same here. I've been thinking about it every day. It just tickles away, and today is the day.
I've also been waiting 3 years.
So let's shoot.
All right.
Well, Toby, this is the moment.
Okay.
Let loose, Joe.
Okay.
It was right on the breastplate.
Yeah. Great shooting, Joe. Shot one. How do you feel?
Oh, it's great to finally get to have a go of it. Square in the middle of the breastplate, definitely not going through.
No. Well, keep them rolling. Let's put a few more in,
Yep.
and then we'll go down and have a look what we got.
Perfect.
Just like the last time, going through the center of the breastplate ain't gonna fucking happen. Usually, I mean, we'll see.
Right there.
Oh, I like that. That was good.
Yeah. So
Stuck
that
for a minute and then fell.
it looked to me like it went through the mail and into the padding. I felt that Aventail being vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
I'm not so sure now, actually.
Just winged off harmlessly.
It did. He was just fine.
You may be asking, like, why can't you hit the center of the breastplate? So when you're shooting archery, again, you can get around the target, but many things can affect your release point. If you have tension, something gets in your eye. Again, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong when you're shooting a bow, even at this close range. And also the fact that you're only 160 pounds back, you can't exactly take forever to shoot. You also got to shoot fast too, so you don't have time to like steady your shot and look at a thing like crossbow.
Oh,
Now that one.
it's not fine.
That one stuck in.
And it, well, severely wounded and out the fight. I mean, that's through his shoulder joint. So
Should we go see?
let's have a look.
Okay. So that second one actually went between his
That or he wasn't shooting at the breastplate. I don't know.
arm and his body.
So Toby, I mean, fantastic strikes in the first round. So number one was here, wasn't it?
Yep.
Pretty unmarked, tiniest little dent. Number two, under the armpit, well, lucky for him. Number three, just caught him up here.
But again, that shows you the sloping, glancing surface of the armor really
Yeah.
doing its job.
And barely a dent, barely a dent. Number four, end of battle.
Well, hang on, he got hit up here as well.
Oh,
and
yes, he
there's still a head in there.
So went through, yeah, just one layer of the mail, it skipped past the padding,
Scraped the breastplate underneath.
yeah.
It's gone through all of that.
But again, you can see here now, you can actually see the second layer of the mail standard. So even had it gone through the breastplate,
It hit
it
something
would
else.
still have the mail standard beneath that.
And then number four has taken.
And so that Aventail is more interesting, right? Because it would have to go under the breastplate, and it also have to go through another set of mail to penetrate. But again, that arm shot, I mean, there's a major artery there if you didn't know on your armpit. So you get hit there, I mean, it's game over. So yeah, I'm not really surprised it went through there.
Get him out of
Yeah.
commission.
Yeah, and that's battle over. So straight into the shoulder joint.
You could probably survive that maybe, but you're not fighting anymore.
Possibly ever, actually.
And yeah, when he means possibly ever, I mean, even today, if you get shot somewhere, It's not like 100% fully healed. Hell, if you sprain something, you're still going to feel it for the rest of your life. I have a sprain on my left hand, and then a new one on my left foot, I think. A little bit, not much, but even sprains you'll still feel, let alone getting shot and having a chunk, just missing. So, yeah.
That's quite an interesting spread of numbers to think
Yeah.
about.
1 in 4
Yeah.
takes the fellow out on that
Yeah.
first round.
But it shows you how this is good armor. It stopped 3 direct hits, but he's still hurt.
Yeah. I reckon we just leave him as he is now. Pull this one, go again, see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah. In enough. Round 2. Go again,
All
Joe.
right.
Okay.
If you want to know what that bracer is, that leather bracer, that's the only time it's acceptable to have it in fucking medieval movies, is if you're shooting a goddamn, as an archer, you're shooting it. It's because it's basically a slap point. You don't want 160 pounds of string to hit your forearm, which can easily happen, by the way. Easily happen. I wear a forearm grip, and I only shot like a 45-pound bow.
Interesting. I thought it would go through there.
Shape.
Strong shape. Is that blown a rivet?
It's just thinking it's just broken the arming point. Well, he's still coming at you, so.
Yeah.
Now, that's interesting. I didn't know it would hit you with enough force to blow out your armor. That's really bad. Especially, I don't know if it's fully disconnected. I don't think it is, which means you're going to have a whole bunch of open gap, and it's also going to be flopping around, and you can't do anything about it. The thing, picture this, you're a knight. The best thing you could do, pull up your helmet and look at it. I mean, if you have mail mittens on, you really can't fix it. If you have articulated fingers, which I don't think they had at the time, maybe if they did, if they had those, then you could, I don't know, try and tie it. I mean, you don't really have any options if that shit happens. Let's put it that way. That's not a kill, but that's definitely taking you out of the action for a while. Depending if you can fix it.
You can took a bird out in the hedge as well with that head.
That was a good one.
Yeah. So square on
Yeah.
centre of the breastplate. Bam.
And also very close. I almost might say too close because of the danger that could happen. One of those things hits the wrong way, ricochets. I mean, that thing could go into your throat and kill you instantly. So.
Beautiful. Right.
Thank you.
I mean, that was great, but we had some exploding arrows there.
Yeah.
Lots of them. I want to take Will up and have a look
Yeah,
at this.
yeah.
Do you mind?
Of course.
Brilliant. Will, come on down. We're going to have a look at this. Interesting. We had another strike on the breastplate.
Yep, no chance of
Total
going through,
explosion.
yep.
And this is like a wasteland of broken arrows. Tell us the arrow. I mean, because wrought iron heads, which are not going through here, but we've
No.
been doing other tests ourselves.
Yeah, we've got wrought iron through flat carbon steel. So what we're seeing here is the effect of shaping a piece of armor to deflect arrows.
Yeah.
And it's working perfectly.
And then
As armor should, in all fucking movies. If you wear armor, it's supposed to. I mean, you pay a lot of money for the stuff. It's supposed to work.
we
That
got
one
the
came
ice
in
up.
there, did it, up there?
Yeah, so it struck here, bounced
yeah,
off,
yeah.
but it's done nothing.
Now, this is not surprising to me that it bounced off. So these this bassinet, the pig face visor. So the visor is not only like it's shaped like this to deflect arrows, but it is also very far. It's far away from you. Far away from you inside the helmet. So let's put it this way: these eye holes are not like this; they're like that far. Okay, so like as you can see on my head or my face, they're pretty far away from you. So even if it went through a little bit of this, it wouldn't hit your eye, thankfully. But this I mean, it's not exactly going to be a pleasant experience to see that thing deflecting off, but it is doing its job. A miracle shot is if you could hit like in between those. This is flat. I mean, this is a flat surface. It's just open in the middle. If you hit there, I wonder what would happen. But that's a lucky shot. And they've also talked about these breasts being a weak point. Technically, I don't even think they'd get through that. But again, I'm not shooting it. So
So my big question, this is why I wanted to pull you down, is your arrows are broken.
Yep.
Can you make them stronger? Why,
No, we're kind of at the limit here. We're making these as big and powerful as we can to match the big bow. That's 1/2 inch of ash that's been just shattered. There's a point where the energy is just too much for a piece of wood.
Yeah. And I guess you could make them fatter, but then they're going to be slower. And...
Yeah, need a bigger bow. Yeah, we're kind of in that holy trinity of everything working together. The head weight is about as heavy as we can get. The arrow weight is, the thickness is, the spine is. It's all come together for Joe to be able to shoot accurately. We're using the right arrows. Any heavy, it's not going to work.
And those arrows, these are big boy arrows. These are way bigger than anything I ever shot. I mean, these are pretty thick boy arrows. So when they snap in half, it's a lot of force going through them. I had like little carbon fiber arrows that would bend, right? These things are exploding out of the armor. So
the spine is, it's all come together for Joe to be able to shoot accurately. We're using the right arrows. Any heavy, it's not going to work.
Okay, and I've got one last question that I really wanted to touch on. There is, as we said, there is no evidence for case hardening at all on arrowheads, but we also suspect that they might well have done it.
Yeah.
Well, these are kind of like grazes rather than gouges.
Yeah, I think case hardening would have made a much bigger impression on that area there, yeah. And case hardening as a process isn't that difficult if you're doing it in a massive batch as compared to forging it out of bloomery iron and laminated layers and things.
But case hardening, so the reason they're not doing case hardening, they had some for the first thing. It did a little bit more, but the time it took was extraordinarily a lot more. When you're having to pump out thousands of arrows, I don't think you're going to case harden, And we're testing regular armor, so regular arrows are fine. If we're talking like pinnacle armor, maybe we would do case hardening on them for the little bit more edge. But again, your average longbowman is not picking arrows that he's going to use and war, okay? He's just getting supplied the cheapest arrows, Even today, the military takes equipment from the lowest bidder, okay? Lowest bidder is going to get their stuff through it, so I think this is a fair assumption.
Infuriatingly, no evidence.
No.
Should we get him to shoot again?
Before we do, we should have a talk to Augusto about what's happened here.
Yeah.
He's got some fixing to do, so have I.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you a hand with that. We'll get Toby and Augusto in. They can talk about what's going on in the articulation here, because that is interesting. And we'll go fix some arrows, Joe. All right.
Well, we can really see armor doing its job here, can't we?
Oh, absolutely.
The effects are pretty dramatic. Both of these hits would be really painful, but they're not lethal.
Yeah, you would feel them, and you would have a blood bruise at a minimum from these two impacts on both shoulders.
I was not expecting the spolders to actually resist. This is less than 1.5 mil, and this is square on.
It's the shape.
Wow, I was not expecting this at all.
We're really seeing in all of the shots so far how the shape of the plate armor really ramps up the protection that the metal gives you. This hit to the visor is really dramatic as well. It hits right there between the ventilation holes and then skips right up, but this beautifully boxed, fortified sight has done its job and stopped that arrow, and it bounced right off.
It does, it absolutely does. I was expecting this to go through and stick, actually. The articulations are jammed. After getting compromised in the shoulders, how are you fighting with this?
There's two things going on here.
Now, you may ask why he's asking Toby, because Toby fights in armor, and he's a historian. He's my dream to be. He fights in armor and fights in tournaments with it. So
the hits to the breastplate don't really matter because you're pretty safe in there. But your shoulders have gotten hurt, and you've had a couple of near misses that have hit you straight in the face. You're still okay, but you're thinking the next one could go through my eyes. So, there's really the natural reaction here is to crouch a little bit and turn the skull of your helmet forward. One of the main English sources, the Gesta Henrici Quinti, says that after the English started shooting, the French bowed their heads and crouched down because the shooting was so heavy.
And that just makes sense, right? You're not going to be all stoic and stuff. You're going to try and make yourself as small as possible. Also, you don't want to see the arrows coming in and hitting you in the face, right? So you're going to try and it's just a natural human reaction to do that.
That's what I do, and that's what they did.
Then that's what we do next.
And you can see that these plates, so these are, again, early plates, right? 14, 15, not early, but you get the point. You will see later that they not only cover everything possible. Oh, they have shoulder pieces that come over the breastplate in later periods, right? And they cover absolutely as much of the gaps as possible. And this is probably why.
All right. Are you gonna have to take the shoulders off and fix the dents before we keep going?
I can do that. That's going to be an easy quick fix.
I think maybe we should
Yes, absolutely.
have some quick field repairs.
Yes, that I can do.
So this time, Toby, as we know, they were worried about the arrows coming through the sights and the breaths. So they walked in as if they're walking through a storm, all hunched down. So I think, Joe, give them some hail.
Okay.
I like that they're shooting a target like this too, because it is. We have historical sources that this is what they did, and it's a natural human reaction. And I kind of want to see what the armor's going to do now.
Interesting that. All the significant damage has really been here and here. The arms are hurt, but those two are both taking them out.
Oh, that was a good one.
Nice.
That breastplate is doing
Yeah.
its job.
Right over his heart, that one.
Yeah.
So,
It shatters the arrowhead. Think about how much force that is.
Joe, I'd really love to see his sort of left forearm, if you can whack that. And if you don't, you've got the skirt behind, so I think that's a really good target.
I'll give it a go.
Ah.
Yeah. Again. It's the male, isn't it? Really, it's
That
the male.
the lower torso is as we suspected a key weakness.
I mean, the male is doing
No.
very, very little.
Nothing.
And I think what we know from the male tests that we did actually
Mm-hmm.
was that even the really best quality handmade male that we can source
Yeah.
wouldn't stop that, not remotely.
Yeah, what we're seeing here is some really strong motivating factors behind the evolution of plate armor in the next decade or so. But we're not quite there yet, and he's getting hurt.
And that makes, right, obviously, like, again, as I alluded to, plate gets, bigger and thicker, or not thicker, but covers more. You can see why, because getting hit in the lower side where he has basically no plate armor on the legs and the lower body, I mean, is going through, and it is going to do serious damage to you. It'll probably kill you if it hits you in the right place.
What can you say?
It looks bad.
It is bad. We had another one explode on the breastplate. Actually, that's our biggest dent to date.
That's a nice one.
Yeah.
And there's a piece of the arrowhead stuck on him there. See that?
So
that
there
bit
is.
of fragment there.
It's hit on the V,
Yeah.
and part of it's gone that way, and part of it's gone that way.
Yeah.
And do you remember from the other film, Arrows vs. Armour 1, how important that V was at deflecting the arrows?
It continues to be.
Yeah. I mean, it is really interesting how this male is working. Now, we have to say here again,
Now, they're talking about this V. Again, if you haven't seen the first video, go watch it. But this V basically is for protecting the... People have always wondered, like, what the hell this thing was for. It makes sense, right? It's basically, if an arrow hits here, is instead of going up and into your neck and killing you, it's going to hit this ridge and fly off. Like, it's going to ting and then fly off. And that's why that's there. The T-72 has something like this. However, it's only meant for really water. It's not meant for a saber round to go, ding, ding. It's more for water. But, this is why it's on a breastplate here.
Yeah.
and do you remember from the other film, Arrows vs. Armour 1, how important that V was at deflecting the arrows?
It continues to be.
Yeah. I mean, it is really interesting how this mail is working. Now, we have to say here again that this is not the best of the handmade mail we could source. But we did our tests, our comparative tests, and we know from that the kind of mail at this kind of ring size, even in the best handmade we can source, is not stopping arrows.
And you think about where these are hitting right in the region of the groin, the hips, the top of the thigh. There's major blood vessels there. He gets hit, he's gonna just bleed out real fast. What we're seeing here is an armor where the strong points are really strong
Yeah.
and the weak points are really weak. It's a very extreme spread.
If I was walking out of the lines on that day at Agincourt and I was looking at my friends who had plate down here and I knew what English arrows could do, and I didn't have plate, I'd be really wondering what I was doing there.
Well, clearly you should be,
Yeah.
because that's a major weakness.
Yeah. What Joe was aiming for.
And at this time, also must, I believe they were still using shield, and you can see why it would be a benefit to wield a shield. However, not all knights did this. If you have a two-handed polearm, for example, poleaxe, my favorite weapon, um, you can't have a shield with you because you have two hands full. So unless you had like a warhammer or a mace or God forbid a sword and a shield, then maybe. But that's why most knights didn't have shields in later periods because they got fully armored to stop stuff like this. But in this period, I mean, it's a good trade off. You want a shield to stop, some arrows for this, and you may be wanting a shield now.
Was a strike on these here,
Mm-hmm.
and we haven't got that yet. I think that would be a very interesting thing to see because it's so thin, we assume that the arrow should go straight through it. But it has form in the way that our flat plate tests, when we were doing our comparative testing, didn't have form. And it was also completely supported behind by the archery foam. It was a good test, but it's a really good setup if you want to penetrate. That is shaped, a little bit give, not so easy to penetrate, even though it's only 1 mil.
Okay, well, the instinctual move to bow your head and crouch down a bit didn't really do this particular individual much good. He still got shot straight through the shoulder, and he's had at least 3 killing blows to his lower torso. So he's pretty decisively dead and out of it. The French advance has gotten much closer to the English, and one of the effects of that is that the French knights are now passing the wings of the English line, and there are archers who now can shoot at them at much more extreme angles. So I think the next thing we should do is turn our knight 3/4 to Joe's shooting to start to simulate some of that flanking shooting.
What he's talking about is the French had to hit the English line in the Battle of Agincourt in the center, and they were bypassing the archers on the wings because they were in the woods or heavy forest area and protected by stakes. So they wanted to break the center, so they were getting shot in the sides and maybe the back. So it'd be interesting to see I'm assuming it's going to probably go through the armor at that point.
Because of course, the sides of the helmet, the sides of the breastplate are thinner because
Right.
you make your armor thicker at the front, thinner at the sides.
Right.
Right, let's turn him, let's shoot again.
Okay.
So Joe,
And we're going to have to cut the video off there because it's already a 41-minute video. Again, the video is in the description to the original. Please go watch it if you want an uninterrupted version of it. And please go like it. Otherwise, I will see you next time for part 2, which should be up there if it is out. Otherwise, I'll see people for part 2.